Good morning, football fans. All right, so it is now officially week 11. We got 3 more weeks until the end of the season, so there's a lot to talk about in playoff hopes and in conference championship contenders. And what we've seen with this latest ranking, the college football ranking came out, and to me, it was very surprising on how they ranked a lot of teams, but I also understand why they ranked certain teams where they did. Like with Ohio State, Indiana, the top 5 basically staying unchanged. I figured that was going to be the case, being that the top 3 were undefeated, and Alabama has the head-to-head win over Georgia. Alabama has one of the most impressive resumes when you look at their strength of record and strength of schedule. They are top 3 in that category. A&M also is a top 3. I think they're actually number 1 in that category, but they also consider eye tests. I think that's what a lot of people are forgetting about, that one of the criteria that they're watching is eye tests. Yes, strength of record matters. Yes, strength of schedule matters. But what they want to see alongside those two is the eye test. And when you look at the eye test, Ohio State and Indiana might not necessarily have the strength of record that Texas A&M does, but their strength of schedule isn't so under par where it knocks them out of the conversation. And then when you look at them on the field, they dominate their opponents, right? The only close game Indiana has had was against Iowa, and Iowa is 6-2. They're ranked inside the top 25. That is not a bad game to win 5 points on. While A&M has had a close game against Auburn, who is a 3-5 team, 3-4 team, and is currently unranked. So when you look at the eye test, Indiana's close game is better than A&M's close game, and they performed better against a better team. So that's what they're keeping in account. In Ohio State, they've beaten everybody. They've shut the doors on every team that they face, no matter if it's just a pure offensive performance, a pure defensive performance. Both teams Ohio State has dominated the games that they've played. So that's why they're over A&M. And then when you look at 7 through 10, I like that Ole Miss went up to 6. I actually thought they were going to go up to 6 when the ranking was coming out. I figured they would jump Oregon, being that they have the better strength of record. They have the better strength of schedule, and their eye test performance is a lot better. They went toe-to-toe with Georgia on the road. And then BYU, Texas Tech, same thing there compared to Oregon. I like the fact that they're 7-8 because when we're going to talk more about the Texas Tech BYU game, but when you look at that, whoever wins that game, if it is Tech, they're just going to switch rankings because I don't see Oregon jumping those schools unless they beat Oregon, and that's what they give, or they beat Iowa and they give Oregon the nod up next week. I understand why Notre Dame's at 10 because they're the best 6-2 team. I honestly would say it's Utah because Utah's only 2 losses are to a BYU and Texas Tech squad. Granted, that Texas Tech loss was extremely bad, but they lost relatively new to the season, while Notre Dame has lost earlier in the season. So it depends on where you want to look. Yes, early losses, and this is a hot take that a lot of people are talking about around the internet, is your losses are just a loss. It doesn't matter if you lose in the beginning or the end of the season. If you lose in the beginning of the season, it's just like losing in the end of the season. And that's not true because teams evolve. Teams change the way they play every single week. Like, you improve as a football program from week to week. Like, you're not the same team that you were in week 1. Nobody's the same team that they were in week 1. And if you say that they are, one, this is just cold hard facts. 1, you're not watching football. 2, you don't understand the game of football, and that's perfectly okay. Like, everybody doesn't understand the game of the sport. They're just fans of the sport, and that's perfectly okay. But to not understand the fact that you can change from week 1 to week 14 in every facet of the game and be a completely different team is a very true statement. There's some teams out there that get worse after week 1. So, yes, a week 1 loss is nothing like a week 14 loss because you're facing a totally different team. Like Florida State, for instance. Let's take Florida State. You take that week 1 loss that Alabama has against Florida State and have them play right now. That game would be a completely different outcome. Florida State might not actually score 31 points. They probably won't even score. I'll say they only score like 17 in that game. Probably only 10 with the way Alabama's now playing. I'm sorry if y'all hear my dogs. They're going absolutely ballistic. So yes, a week 1 loss or a week 2, 3, or 4 loss is so much different than a 12, 13, 14, 11 week loss. And that's why Texas and Oklahoma are where they are. Because Texas, granted, losing to Florida, which I would think their loss to Florida should weigh a little bit more on their schedule. But it's because they beat Oklahoma and it's because they beat Vandy that they're in the top 12. If Oklahoma would have taken care of business and Vandy would have taken care of business, Texas would be a top 12 team. But neither team did. So everybody can be mad that Texas is up there in 12, but the teams that they beat didn't take care of business. And at a certain point, you have to honor head-to-head. So that's why Texas is there at 11. Love it, hate it, dislike it, but it is what it is. And then you got Utah at 13, which I personally like. I love the story that Utah's on right now. Like, Utah has the best story out of anybody right now currently in college football, because if they win out, Texas falls, Oklahoma falls, Oregon falls. Like, Oregon losing to USC and Iowa is not out of the picture, right? Utah climbing to number 10 or number 9 is definitely not out of the picture, especially if Texas and Oklahoma loses. So I love what Utah has on the table right now. I think if Utah can clear their schedule, I don't think USC and Iowa is going to go undefeated. I think it's going to be, they're going to beat each other up. And I personally think it's going to be the team that beats Oregon that loses in that matchup. So, and then Michigan, they can always throw a wrench in the situation by beating Ohio State. And those 3 teams out of the Big Ten right now could really cause a lot of disruption. But I think with that disruption in the Big Ten and the way they're respecting Utah, I think that will give Utah the ability to get a bid in over the Big Ten. I don't think they're necessarily outranking Big Ten over Big 12 this year. And I think because they're not doing that, if Utah, a little more talk on Friday action before we get into our game day picks. If Tulane, now this goes back to USC, Tulane, USC, and South Florida keeps their dreams alive. Tulane beats Memphis, USC beats Northwestern, and South Florida beat UTSA, who beat Tulane. So this will put them up over Tulane in the rankings. And they beat North Texas, who beat Navy. So right now, South Florida is back in the front runner case to go into the American Conference Championship. And I want to say right now it is Tulane in second, followed by North Texas, Navy, Memphis. So right now, South Florida is holding their own destiny. They just have to win out. When we go ahead and look at other matchups for this week, you got Indiana going on the road to Penn State and Georgia going on the road to Mississippi State. I think both environments are going to be really tough to play in, but for what it showcased last week with the way Penn State is, I don't think they're going to hold too much of a problem for Indiana. Now, Indiana's got to have to keep their head on straight. Same thing with Georgia. I don't think Mississippi State's going to be too much of a problem, but they have a very dangerous offense. Their defense is going to have to keep their head on straight, especially the defense. I mean, this is something I've emphasized about Georgia all year long. I mean, that defense, those linebackers have to somehow improve in pass coverage. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what it's going to take with our linebackers. Our DBs are slowly getting better. I think our DBs had the best game last week against Florida that they've had all year. But our linebackers had the worst performance of the year. I mean, but a lot of that was scheme-wise, with motioning the running back out or going 3-2 wide and you making the linebackers spread out and leaving the middle open, doing a lot of insides, a lot of quarterback draw plays because the linebackers are spreading out. So that's a lot more scheme than necessarily just play style of the linebackers. But there were some tackling issues. We also couldn't fill in gaps when it just came to basic run plays with the linebackers. Just overall performance, it was an iffy game for them. And for a squad that's really good against the run, they got absolutely torched by the offensive line and the running back last week. Georgia is going to have to figure out defensively because Mississippi State is not an offense that you can just walk into Starkville and go, okay, let our defense play half. You can't do that against Mississippi State. You're going to have to bring your A game defensively because they can drop 38, 40 points if they want to. I think SMU is another team. They need to go ahead and keep their shit together because they're facing Boston College. Boston College for 2 weeks in a row has played a top 25 team to the wire or into the fourth quarter. I think that program is turning around. I think that program is finally figuring itself out. If Boston College does that against SMU, it's going to be a scary and long day for SMU. So they need to keep their heads on straight. With everything that's going down, I want to shout out James Madison. James Madison is in the situation to where if they handle business, they might be the number one group of 5 school coming out. Same thing with Kennesaw State. If they can handle business, their only 2 losses are to Wake and Indiana in the beginning of the season. If they can win the CUSA, then they can be the highest. So the G5 right now, there's a lot of teams that could definitely be the number 1 team out of the group of 5. And I love what's going down in the group of 5. Now, granted, group of 5 team is going to be like last year's Boise State, but you're going to have a lot of competition at that level. And I think with the expansion of the playoffs, and this is something I want to talk about real quick before I get into the game day. So it was brought to my attention by a friend of mine that when it comes to the playoff system, he thinks there needs to be an entirely new playoff system for the group of 5. And I understand his point from that, but what I will say to it is, I don't think it's the group of 5 that is messing up the playoff system. I think it is the higher power 4s, SEC and the Big Ten, that are trying to be too money hungry. And they're trying to hold too much dominance over the sport. Go look at the FCS. North Dakota State, South Dakota State probably have the biggest leg room in that division. And they could control the shapeage of the playoffs if need be. But they're not. Every conference champ gets a bid into the playoffs. I think you have a couple at-larges. But where you're ranked is where you're ranked. If you win your conference, you're in. Right? And that's how the FBS playoff system is going to have to be. If you win your conference, you're in. You're ranked where you're ranked. Right? And from there, I will say it should be all 9 conferences. All 9 conference champs should make the playoffs. Because, 1, you're going to elevate the sport by doing so. By boosting the elevation of the sport, you're going to bring more money to the sport. If you want to knock the group of 5 out of the CFP rankings, you need to just go ahead and create a third division in Division I football. So you might need to just go ahead and call the FCS Division I AAA. Group of 5 needs to become the Division I 2A, and then the Power 5, depending on where you put the Pac-12. If you put them back down in the group of 6, or move them up and make it a Power 5, and just call that Division 1. The NCAA is going to have to figure out something in that aspect, because it's not. And if the SEC and the Big Ten keeps doing their money grab situation where they're trying to, we deserve the most bids in, then it's going to ruin the sport, because then it's just going to come down to the Big Ten versus the SEC. There's a perfect playoff system in place in the FCS. The FBS just needs to implement it. If they want to, just go ahead and expand. If not, then where you're ranked. If you win your conference, you win your conference. And if the Pac-12 comes back, they need to expand to 6 conference champs, to the highest group of 5 getting in. And I think what's going to cause so much problems with the highest group of 5 getting in is now you're trying to nitpick which group of 5 gets in if they're all 1 loss. Or if you have 3 undefeated conference champs, well, you're going to say, okay, well, this one deserves to get in over this one. So I think at the end of the day, you should just go ahead and do all 9 conference champs gets into the playoffs. Currently, it's a 12-team playoff system. So if 9 teams get in, that leaves 3 spots open. Now, with that said, it is time to talk about game day picks. So let's run through them. First game of the week, we got A&M versus Missouri. An A&M squad that is dangerous with sack numbers. They have one of the best defensive ends in all of college football. He is definitely, in my opinion, a top 10 prospect going against Missouri. A ferocious defense. I think their defense could step up to the A&M. So A&M has to watch this road game. But I think A&M has the firepower offensively to handle Missouri. And plus, Missouri is going to be down their starting quarterback, so give me A&M. Oregon versus Iowa. I think this game is going to come down to the wire. I think Iowa defensively is one of the best teams in the country, especially in the Big Ten. I think they have a tremendous special teams. That's going to be the winner right there. The special teams performance is going to make or break the game. And nobody does special teams like Iowa. Nobody. I don't think there's a team, you can tell me a team right now that performs on special teams like how Iowa performs on special teams. Where they find these punt returners, hey, they need to keep finding them, because this is what generates points and scores for Iowa Hawkeyes. And offensively, they're starting to figure it out a little bit. I've seen their production over the couple weeks. They're starting to figure out how to score. Like, that's one of the biggest things that I've even said, like, Iowa could win the Big Ten if they could just score. Like, their defense always shows up. Their special teams shows up. But their offense just is nowhere to be found. Now they're putting scores up on the offensive side of the ball. So Iowa's starting to figure it out. Oregon, they're a good defensive team. I don't think I should take any hit for their defense. But it's not like they're amazing. It's not like they do everything perfectly. So there's errors in their gameplay that Iowa definitely can exploit. And then Oregon's offense is going to be a challenge. But if Iowa can keep an Indiana team to 20 points, Iowa most definitely can do the same thing to Oregon. I don't think that's going to be any problem. If Iowa does that to Indiana or Iowa State, Minnesota, they're going to do that to Oregon. So I think this game is going to be a close game. It's going to be a dog game. Like, I'll say like a 15-9 game, 16-18 type game. Like, this is going to be a close defensive battle. I think Iowa will win in the end. And for the game of the day, the game that I'm watching right now, BYU versus Texas Tech. For me personally, I like both teams. Granted, neither team was the team that I wanted to win the Big 12. So now that my personal winner has been knocked out of the equation, I have to ride with Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech, with that defensive run game, it's going to be a big problem for BYU. Now, I know BYU did get back LJ Martin, their running back, and you're going to have Bear Brockmeyer in that combination of quarterback, running back in the run game for BYU, which has posed many different problems, being a top 10 unit in all of college football. But I think Texas Tech's run defense it's legit. I think it's no joke, because, I mean, even Utah has one of the best running games in all of college football, posting up like 230 on the ground a game. But Texas Tech was able to close that down. So if that's something that Tech can do against a Utah run game, they did it against the Kansas State run game, then I'm pretty sure they're going to be able to do that against a BYU run game, especially being that it's a home game for Tech. I think Brockmeyer is going to have to figure a way how to beat them in the air. And I don't know if Brockmeyer and that offense can actually beat somebody in the air. I know they can beat them on the ground, but I just haven't seen them be able to beat them in the air yet. So to me, I think Texas Tech's going to win. It's not going to be a blowout like a 42-20 game or 35-10. No, this is going to be a close game. I mean, this is going to be like 28-25. So this is going to be a close game. I think all three games this week are going to be extremely close, just because of how the teams are. Like, these teams are so similar in many different facets, and they're playing, and the strength of one team is literally the strength of the opposing side for the other team. So I think this is going to be a very good weekend. But to me, I got Iowa over Oregon, Missouri over A&M. I mean, A&M over Missouri. Nope, ain't gonna do that. A&M over Missouri, and Texas Tech over BYU. So this is my Game Day podcast. Like always, I hope y'all check out the social links. And I'm trying to improve on my speaking. I'm trying to improve on the flow of these podcasts. So critique me, say what you want in the comments, because anything personally helps me improve the overall game that I'm putting out for y'all. Like always, like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next Game Day podcast.